welcome to another episode of You Don't Know Jack with Lydia and Matt. How's it going, Matt?
It is a nice, sunny, but terribly freezing day here in Mountain
thought
Valley.
about you last night when it was 12 degrees outside.
It was nasty.
Well, we did our marathon Spanakopita yesterday.
I saw the time lapse.
Yeah, time lapse, which was, only took 38 seconds in time lapse, but much longer in real life, I promise. Yeah, so we did about 22 Spanakopitas yesterday, and mid Spanakopita, I was like, oop, temperature just dropped. I could feel it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what is it? And Tim's like, oh, it's like 24. And I was like, oh, no. And then it kept going down and going down. And then you and I were chatting and saying, like, we were going to do a podcast today. And I was like, oh, God, I hope Matt's heat's working.
Yeah, now the heat's running strongly.
Heat's up and running and rocking
Thank
and
God.
rolling.
Yeah, but other than the fact that it's bitterly cold, we have hit nadir. We're on the way back up. More sunlight.
Yes. So we get a minute.
Yeah.
The 26th, we get a full minute of sun. So, summer solstice is my dad's saddest day of the year.
Because it gets shorter.
Because it gets shorter every day after that. So now my dad it's on the up. It's really funny. Tim was saying this about my father the other day. He goes, we could have 20 days of sunshine and one day of rain. And my dad's like, it's the worst.
Yeah.
Tim's like, okay.
I mean, I appreciate the rain, like for my lawn. Yeah. But I want it to rain at night, like it snowed last Sunday when I didn't have anything to do.
Yeah.
Like at nighttime, if it wants to pour down from like 11 to 5 in the morning, that's where we get the rain.
Like if you could schedule weather.
Yeah, exactly. And just like, hey, if you want to have a couple inches of snow, which I hate, but hey, give it to me on a Sunday. I didn't have anywhere to be last Sunday. Just stayed home. My daughter and I had gone out for breakfast right before it started.
Yeah.
A shout out to the Hummingbird.
Oh, the best.
Elite off the menu. Avocado toast.
Really?
The best. I mean, it is elite. It's off the menu, but they make it.
Oh, well, that's
If you don't know,
now you
know.
Now I know.
Now you know.
Wow.
Elite.
I'm going to have to get that the next time I'm out there.
Epically good.
That's amazing. So I mean, I think yesterday watched tons of college football, and oh, by the way, the NFL snuck it 2 games in, which I had no idea about. We'll get into that later.
We will.
But yeah, I mean, we're getting prepped for the big holiday season.
Yeah, multiple holidays converging here. We have Christmas, Hanukkah, and Kwanzaa all go this week.
So we have the Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa.
Uh-huh.
And so Hanukkah party's on Friday.
Yes.
So that's exciting. A matzo ball, soup kugel, the works, latkes,
Jelly donuts.
Jelly donuts, yes. Everybody comes for the jelly donuts.
I like the whole thing.
You like the whole shebang, huh?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, so any big plans for Wednesday?
Family, doing the morning thing, and then my brother and my nieces are coming up.
Nice.
And, so just, they're going to be here for a couple days. Have some other family coming over on the 26th.
Uh-huh.
My cousins and my uncle, and so it's going to be, it'll be a good time. So I have some cooking to do.
I was going to say.
Yeah. Gone with it the last couple years. Homemade lasagna on Christmas Day, very popular.
Yeah.
Using the meat substitutes in the sauce. I'm the only vegetarian there. Everybody loves it. And my other secret is, I roast cauliflower. I mix it in with the ricotta. Makes it a little, if you've never pulsed cauliflower, I know you can't eat cauliflower.
No.
It's very strange for someone who's a vegetarian to be allergic to cauliflower. Bad beat. But when you pulse it, it rices. That's why you use cauliflower.
Yeah.
So it blends in really texturally with ricotta. Nobody really knows.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make it quite as dense of a dish.
Right.
So those are my two go-tos.
Those are your go-tos.
Yeah. And the ready-bake, noodles for lasagna are revolutionary.
What can I tell you?
Everybody, like I was watching Matty Madison, who's a chef. He's on The Bear.
Mm-hmm.
It's all he uses too. He's like, why would you do that? He's like, don't be an idiot. Yeah.
The only thing I can say is you need to use more sauce than you think.
Yes.
So think about it that way.
Right.
But if you do that, please.
The worst
part. The
part.
lasagna I made, that was all.
Right. The worst part of making lasagna was
boiling
boiling noodles. And you're trying to deal with them hot. You're trying to get them out.
Break.
They break. It was a disaster.
It's not great.
It's revolutionized making
lasagna.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
it's a much easier process.
Lasagna I made for you.
Yeah. Which is
baked noodles.
fantastic.
Yeah. No cauliflower in that one.
No. much to your, it's your loss. It's really unfortunate.
Listen,
for those of us who don't eat meat, like you and I, cauliflower is a go-to staple for
It's just
vegetarian.
like, you can have cauliflower. No, I can't. Yeah. It was a strange situation. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I had a little bit of hot sauce Tim was eating. He was like, here, taste this polenta.
Uh-huh.
Hot sauce had cauliflower paste in it. I didn't even think to look.
Right. I would not think to look that cauliflower paste was in hot sauce.
No. I had like one bite. My lips were really swollen. It was not worth it. Was not worth it.
I understand. But so, that's our, so, not too eventful of a holiday.
Yeah.
How about you? Obviously, the big party on Friday.
Big party on Friday. We have a Hanukkah party on Christmas Eve. So 24th, a big family Hanukkah party in Oakland. So go up there for that. And then Christmas Day, I will continue the tradition of listening to records all day.
Love it.
Reading a book and just generally chilling out. It's pretty nice, actually, I must say. It's a good tradition.
I'm here for it.
And then I create a Spotify playlist after.
Nice.
Yeah, so people can listen to it if they feel.
You're like President Obama. You put in your top 20. He puts his songs out for 2024. Liddy puts out her Spotify holiday playlist.
My spin list for the year. Yeah, which is pretty fun. So, usually maybe tomorrow into Tuesday, I'll start to like go through our vast record collection and start to pull. So I usually start with jazz in the morning and move into rock and roll.
And we're going to talk about music. Maybe the band that we're going to talk about, maybe they get into the playlist.
I think they're going to make an appearance
especially given what they found out. So we're going to talk about that too.
Yes.
We call that a tease.
A little tease. Oh, let's get into it. Let's start out with, so we're going to start with Rickey Henderson because I feel like he deserves to start out the podcast first. That was a bummer.
That was a real bummer, man. Like, and by the way, Rickey Henderson dead at 65. Like, you just looked at one of those guys. He's not that gigantic guy. You think, man, Rickey Henderson's, Rickey, we call himself Rickey because Rickey likes to serve from the third person.
Exactly.
But Rickey's going to live to be 155.
Yes, because he never lifted weights. He didn't do anything. He just did push-ups and sit-up regimen every day and was just like super strong and really athletic up until, his wife would tell these stories about him in his 60s, and we'll talk about that. But he talked in the third person. He was the greatest leadoff hitter and base stealer, setting the record at 1406.
And run score. Yeah, all-time run score past Ty Cobb. When you pass Ty Cobb in anything in baseball, that's a big deal.
Yeah, and he beat the previous stolen base record holder Lou Brock by 468 stolen bases.
So you're a Red Sox fan.
Yes.
I saw one of the great stats. His last stolen base was for the Red Sox because Rickey played for a lot of teams at the end of the game. What was Rickey's total stolen base number?
1,406.
Okay. When he stole that base in his 18-year career, so he had stolen 1,406 bases.
Yeah.
During the same length of his career, the Red Sox as a team had stolen like 30 less bases than he did individually.
I know. It's insanity.
And
he was also saying, like, if they had changed the rules to where they were now with the larger bases, he said it would have been over. They said, just like put him on third, just get him into third, because he's like, I would have been out of there.
Well, there was a great game line stat, because there's a lot of stuff coming out with Rickey Henderson. There was one game he stole 5 bases, scored 4 runs, and didn't have a hit.
I know. I read that and I was like, what?
Well, so Rickey had that crouch that he batted in.
Yeah.
So he had a small strike zone and he had a very good eye. And so Rickey did not swing at bad pitches.
Nope.
He knew, right, if you put Rickey Henderson, especially in the 80s, if Rickey got on first, he's going to be on third.
Third, exactly.
Yeah.
My thing is, so Tim and I were talking about it a little bit this morning. So we just talked about Juan Soto's deal, right? Juan Soto has a good eye.
Right.
And that's it.
Right.
So how much do you think Rickey Henderson would be if Rickey Henderson was playing right now? How much money do you think Rickey Henderson would be worth?
It's like what they asked Joe DiMaggio.
Yeah.
When they asked Joe DiMaggio, like in the 70s or whatever, like, whatever the contract was, someone had a big contract and said, well, what would your contract look like? He said, well, I'd walk into Mr. Steinbrenner's office and say, hello, partner. Yeah, because, no, it's like, because, Rickey is the definition of a 5-tool baseball player.
Yeah.
Okay, an elite runner. Okay, his speed,
so
baseball
good.
ranks between like 20 and 80 is what Rickey's speed had to be above 80, even though 80 was their top score.
Yeah.
But he could run.
Hit.
He could hit. He could hit for
field.
power. He could field. And he was also a showman.
Let me tell you.
Nobody. By the way, one of the fastest guys to ever play baseball. Maybe the slowest trip around the bases when Rickey hit a home run. It took a while.
It took a hot minute.
Rickey Cadillac it with the best of them.
Well, so he was born in Chicago in a snowstorm on Christmas Day in 1958. Rickey Nelson Henley was named after the 1950s teen idol Rickey Nelson. According to family legend, his mother, Bobbie, went into labor before entering the hospital. Nurses delivered him in the car. And his father arrived frantic and late to the hospital, demanding to see his wife. And the nurses told him, calm down. The boy's already in the back seat. Over the years, Henderson would relay that story as proof in destiny to be baseball's greatest base stealer. I was born fast, he said. I mean, he emulated Ali in a lot of ways.
Oh, yeah.
And he had his third person shtick, which I thought was great. And Sandy,
I'm not sure that was a shtick for Rickey. I think that Rickey just talked like
Rickey
that.
Talked like that. You
that's
know,
how Rickey talked. Like Harold Reynolds was telling a great story. Said there was 1 year in the 80s that Rickey did not win the stolen base.
Ooh.
And he got hurt. Okay.
Oh, okay. But
and
there's
so
a reason.
it's Harold Reynolds and like Willie Wilson for the Royals down to the last day. And Reynolds steals a base, wins the stolen base title, 61 for the season. Said next day, phone rings. He said, Henderson here. He said, 61? 61? He said, that's embarrassing. Rickey will have 60 by the All-Star break.
Oh, my God. And he did.
Yeah. But I mean, like, and again, I sent it to you. One of my ultimate favorite. I had two really good stories. Again, they're all over the internet.
Yeah.
So one is about the, obviously it was very popular in the 80s. You see a lot of guys with John 3:16.
Oh, yeah.
The Bible verse. And so someone said something to Rickey about it. And Rickey said, man, I don't want to hear about no John batting 3:16. Rickey batting 3:30.
Yes.
So that's a great one. And then another one, he and John Olerud had played together for multiple teams.
Yeah.
And whichever team he was on, I think it was when he was with the Mets, because Olerud was with the Mets, but they had played together prior to that or after that, whatever it was. So Olerud's there, and Rickey's in the batting cage, and he says, John, why do you wear the hard batting helmet out in the field? He said, well, Rickey, I had like an aneurysm when I was like 9, and so I do it to protect that. And Rickey's like, man, that's amazing. Man, I knew another guy that played and did the same thing. And he said, oh, Rickey, that was me. I was your teammate on another team. And Rickey was just like totally oblivious to this guy had been his teammate before.
He's like, oh, yeah.
He
Rickey moved around a lot.
Yeah, but Rickey wasn't even like, oh, that's right, man. No, it was like Rickey was like surprised they were teammates. Before.
Yeah. He's like, oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Rickey didn't know that.
Yeah, Rickey didn't realize that. Yeah.
Speaking of him moving around, so the former A manager, Sandy Alderson, said, I traded Rickey Henderson twice, brought him back more times than that. He was the best player I ever saw play. 9 different teams, 1 unforgettable player. Sandy gonna miss Rickey.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
But so, and my friends and I that are baseball friends are texting, like, where does Rickey fall in the pantheon of great baseball players?
He's up there.
Yeah, because he is such a dynamic weapon. And again, the power. I mean, guy has 300 home runs plus. I mean,
the thing is, you look at Rickey and you're like, that's a baseball player.
Yeah.
Like, that is an old school baseball player that we're probably not going to have again because, we probably won't. I'd love it, but I just don't think it's going to happen. But I think, he wanted to play football. His mother told him he shouldn't do that because his body wasn't built for that. And he couldn't handle it, so he should play baseball.
Right.
And he was like, okay.
Right.
And so he played baseball. But my thing is, like, he's one of these guys that was like the quintessential perfect player. He was dynamic to watch. He hit. His personality was like through the roof, So everybody loved him. And I think that you just don't have that anymore in a baseball. You just don't.
And I mean, I guess I would think of, the first baseball game I ever saw, Rickey Henderson played.
Nice.
In Baltimore. He stole 4 bases.
And you still remember that?
Yeah,
right?
I absolutely remember seeing Rickey steal 4 bases. The first baseball game I ever went to. Old Memorial Stadium.
Yeah.
We're on the third base side.
What a hell of a game to go see for your first game. Yeah.
And Rickey did Rickey things.
Yeah.
That's what Rickey did. But I certainly think of him as a Yankee, but I think he's really an A.
Yeah.
It would probably be where.
Well, that's where he.
That's where he won an MVP. That's where he set the stolen base record.
Well, that's where his family moved from Chicago to the Bay Area. Right. And that was his hometown. That was his hometown team.
Yeah.
So his wife tells this great story. She says that Rickey would, even into his early 60s, believe that he could still play. He technically never retired from the MLB. Teams simply stopped calling. And Rickey would say that he could still play if another team would give him a chance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's like, you know, the A's were famous with Charlie Finley for doing gimmicky stuff.
Yeah.
And one time as a gimmick, they signed 58-year-old Satchel Paige.
Yeah.
But Satch didn't get the memo. It was a gimmick and threw 3 shutout innings
Yeah,
at
I
58
know.
years old. So,
I know.
I mean, you know, it happened.
I mean, I would say that he's
Yeah.
probably in pretty good shape. They didn't give a cause of his death, but
I said they had pneumonia.
yeah, I mean, he had a long battle,
Mhm.
something. They said, you know, they thanked the nursing staff and care at USC. So I have a feeling that pneumonia probably was the end.
The cause, but
with
there
the
was
cause,
something.
but there was something else that was an underlying condition, most likely, as you and I both know.
Right.
But nevertheless, what a legacy he leaves.
Yeah.
And like, my God, baseball players now need to really, you know, step it up.
Right. We talk about in baseball, you know, they've and of course we've seen a lot of them fall, the unbreakable records.
Right.
Okay. 2130. You know,
Mhm.
as an Oriole fan, we all know 2130
Yeah.
was the unbreakable, the iron horse, right?
Right.
It was Lou Gehrig's consecutive game streak that nobody thought would fall.
Yeah.
Cal broke it and
Mhm.
eclipsed it by, 400 games.
Yeah.
You know, Cal's was like 2604, somewhere around there.
Mhm.
Do I see somebody breaking that record? Man, I think it's going to be really
It's gonna be tough.
Yeah, I think that's starting to look unbreakable.
I think the stolen base record is going to.
I think the stolen base record is. I just don't see how someone could do that.
No, and nobody's built like that anymore.
Yeah,
and he was built like a baseball player.
Yeah.
Which is like.
I mean, yeah, Rickey has one of the. I think that's absolutely. I think you're much more likely to see somebody if you could play for 20 plus years
Right.
to break his run scored record.
Maybe.
But still not. I mean,
No.
again, it's a staggeringly high number. It's over 2,100 runs scored. I mean, something like.
It's insane.
Yeah, it's a huge number. Remember, Ty Cobb did it, and Ty Cobb also batted like 350. So you got to get on base so many times.
Have to, yeah, that's the thing.
And
It's
you
like
have to be
you have
able
to
to-
make those opportunities to
Yes.
get on base. And that's the thing. Like Rickey stole bases, but
Right.
Rickey got on base.
Rickey got on base because he could walk and hit, and then he scored runs because he'd steal and get to third,
Mhm.
and like sack fly runs that,
Yeah.
that other guys wouldn't get if you're running station to station. Rickey was able to do.
Yeah.
Rickey, did he ever probably not score from second on a base hit? Probably
No.
not. He probably always scored on a base hit.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's just things like that. But it is one of those absolute, I think, unbreakable records is the stolen base record. I think.
Yeah.
I don't think you or I in our life will see somebody even come close.
To 1406.
Yeah, to the stolen base record or Cal's record in
No.
our life. I don't.
No, I don't
mean,
think so. I just
do-
that's the nature of the game.
Do I
has
think
changed.
somebody can push the home run record? Sure, that's always possible. Do I think somebody? The other interesting one that I always want to see someone take a run at, and no one's come within 12 games, is DiMaggio's hit streak.
Oh yes.
But I think DiMaggio had the great advantage on the hit streak of not using the bullpen as much, not taking anything away from 56 games. But I mean, now they
Yeah.
match you up. Like if you're a lefty, right, and
Yeah.
you're the guy just raking. Yeah, in the back half of that game, they're going to bring in lefties to
Yes, of
face you.
course.
They're going to match you up. So yeah, I mean, I think it would really excite people in baseball to see someone make a run at 56. Again,
Yeah.
Pete Rose came the closest at 44, which is the National League record. That's
Yeah.
still 12 games away. That's like 2 full weeks of a season away.
Yeah.
So you didn't really threaten it.
Right.
And the other record, it's not the highest ever. I don't think we'll see 406. Ted Williams, famously the last guy to hit 400.
No, I don't think so either. I
I
think the
Tony
nature of the-
Gwynn's took a run at it.
That's
George,
true, yeah.
George Brett took a run at it.
Yeah.
John Olerud took a run at it one year, ran
Yeah,
into
yeah.
like 370s. Brett finished 390 one year,
Mhm.
which is amazing. And Tony Gwynn was in that range, 387 or something,
Right.
and did it as a right-handed hitter, which is even harder to do because left-handers are going to have the advantage of getting down the line a little faster.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, Ichiro would have been a guy that, could have, but
Yeah.
never even really sniffed. I mean, again, guy batted 350.
I
but
know.
he
I was
never
gonna say,
I mean,
not
yeah, I'm just saying,
terrible.
no. I'm saying, but,
You're
Yeah.
not going to get those numbers.
but I think one of those unimaginable records that I don't see anybody remotely challenging in my life is Rickey.
No.
Yeah, the stolen bases.
Absolutely
Yeah,
not.
so, super sky point to Rickey Henderson.
Oh
He's probably up there, as I said, I can imagine him seeing God. Be like, God, Henderson here.
Yeah, exactly.
You looking for an autograph or what?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I'll run real fast.
Or he'd say like, excuse me, who are you?
Who are you?
I'm Rickey.
Oh.
No, he would say to God, yeah, did you play with me? Yeah. Henderson here.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Godspeed to Mr. Rickey Henderson. Let's see. College football. What a great day of football.
And it started Friday night.
It did start Friday night. Actually, it was a good weekend.
Right here, repping it.
I know. Yes, I love it.
Repping the Irish.
Let me tell you. So Ohio State University beat Tennessee 42-17 at the Shoe, which I think was really great for the seniors, especially last game there.
They looked
like a football
team
team
with purpose.
Yeah,
that was. I think it's clearly as good as they've looked all year.
Do you know why?
Why?
Because I screamed at Ryan Day.
Okay.
Via the TV. I shocked him a little bit. He wasn't expecting it, but I just listen. I felt like he needed a little bit of a wake up call, and I think it got through.
I think Ohio State has a pretty favorable path.
They do.
Excuse me. Penn State's the one with the favorable path. Ohio State's got to go play Oregon.
They have to play Oregon.
But they remember that was a 1-point game.
I know.
Penn State got a really lucky draw.
God,
And they played.
SMU.
They beat up on SMU, and now they get to go play Boise State. I'm not taking anything away from Boise State, but still, that's a pretty
Penn
easy
State
draw.
got a pretty easy thing. Texas beat Clemson. That was a good game, 38-24. No, you're fighting Irish. My God, what a game that was.
And Indiana scored 2 junk touchdowns at the end when the issue was no longer doubt.
Yeah.
Notre Dame really kind of did what Notre Dame did.
Mm-hmm.
Notre Dame runs the ball really well, and Notre Dame's defense is good at all 3 levels.
Yep.
And they, just kind of smothered Indiana
they did.
at a very cold and very interesting South Bend, though. It is kind of, again, as a Notre Dame fan, it is kind of appropriate that the first home college playoff game, as somebody said, as if Notre Dame needs another trivia question,
I know,
was in South Bend.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, from the NCAA college football, like if you want to draw that up, it's kind of perfect.
Yeah,
it was at Notre Dame.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It was great. And I love that it's like 2 Indiana teams like going at it. I thought it was a great story, but we tuned in and it was like, oh, Notre Dame is dominating.
Yeah.
And they're just running them into the ground. So that was a good game.
So, but you're going to see, Notre Dame's going to take on Georgia.
Yep.
It's going to be, I think that's going to be a very good game.
It's going to be
Georgia's not a dynamic offense.
No.
Very good on defense. I think in low scoring in that one. You got Ohio State and Oregon, a much anticipated rematch from a very contested game earlier this year. I think Penn State has a very favorable draw. With taking on Boise. And I think Texas has a very favorable draw taking on Arizona State.
Yeah.
He's done a great job, but I think Texas is uber talented. It's a talented football team.
Absolutely. And then the Ohio State University Bobcats beat Jackson State 30-27. That was a good game. Good for them.
Yeah.
We'll see. They're pretty good. Ohio University. My mother
Athens, Ohio.
My mother's an alum.
Okay.
She's a Bobcat.
Repping him for Athens.
Yeah. She lasted 1 semester at the Ohio State University. And then went to become a Bobcat.
Yep.
But there's so many bowl games and the names are getting even more
I can't
ridiculous.
keep track of any of the names.
I can't keep either. But they're not starting to feel as special as they once did, like getting to a bowl game, like going
especially
to the
now,
Rose Bowl.
Here's the big thing, what I would say for these kind of the second tier bowls.
Yeah.
The big thing is it is 20 extra practices. That is what the bowl games are all about for building for next year. Because they're really, unless you're in those playoff games, they're really like an exhibition.
Right.
But man, it's 3 extra weeks of practice, and that's a big deal to coaches to evaluate players.
Absolutely.
And then you get a lot of guys, if they're in those second tier bowl games, aren't going to play because if they're going to the NFL.
Right.
Now, Shakur Sanders and Hunter, the Heisman Trophy winner, both said they're going to play in the Colorados in the Holiday Bowl.
Good.
So yeah.
NFL snuck a couple games in, as they are known to do, to basically hedge bets and make rules that don't really. Anyway, they're all about player safety, and we'll get into that. So Steelers lost to the Ravens, so now they're each 1-1.
Ravens beat them up pretty good last night.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah,
and then the Chiefs beat the Texans, which is not a surprise.
I thought so. I watched the Ravens game, and I thought the Ravens minimized their stupid mistakes that they seemed to make against the Steelers. The Ravens fumbled a couple times, but recovered them when they fumbled.
Yeah.
But I thought, I think Derrick Henry certainly showed why he was the best free agent move of the offseason, where he literally just kind of bludgeoned the Steelers, especially in the fourth quarter when the Ravens were up 14 and got the ball, and they held the ball for 7 minutes and ended up kicking a field goal. But no, Henry is just that guy's 250 pounds, and he is a load. But no, I thought it was an important win for the Ravens. I think, despite it being like his 6th year, I think it's the first time Lamar Jackson has played against the Steelers in Baltimore.
Really?
Well, because he's either been injured or they've played the last game of the year, and the issues have been in doubt. The Ravens have already clinched like home field throughout twice, and so they didn't play him.
Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it was.
Well, that's cool.
So, and by the way, Lamar Jackson, I know Josh Allen's rightfully getting a lot of
he's got talk. MVP talk is heating up between Allen and
But Lamar Jackson, 39 touchdowns to 4 interceptions.
I know.
It is staggering numbers.
I know.
Like his numbers are actually better than Josh Allen's numbers.
Yeah, his numbers are better, but they're saying like, well, Allen is playing with a broken hand. Yeah. And I'm like, that's fine. Allen doesn't have to play with a broken hand if he doesn't want to.
Right.
And also the numbers don't lie. So let's just call a spade here and give it to Jackson.
Yeah. But I think Lamar has set the bar differently because he's already got 2 MVPs. So what they expect of him. And again, I'm not taking anything away from Josh Allen.
No, I think
great player. By the way, shout out to Ty Johnson last week. 115, 16 yards receiving. Ty's having his best season as an NFL player, I think, by anybody's standards. He was mic'd up. He was on NFL Network this week.
Yes, it's super fun.
Secret info, don't be surprised if Ty Johnson is featured heavily in the Bills game plan this week.
Good.
Heard it through the grapevine. So I think you're going to see a lot of Ty this week again.
You know what? Like Ty, we've always said, because we followed Ty, all over his career and when he was here. So you're just saying basically like you give Ty the ball, Ty's going to do something.
Ty does Ty things.
Ty does Ty things, and it's pretty incredible. Yep. So yeah, Ty Johnson's Bills. Very much looking forward to that.
So it's but I think I will say that about the Ravens-Steelers game, the Steelers are, by their own probably admission, they're pretty domestic on offense. They're not, so, yeah. And so what you probably want to do with the Steelers is put them in a position where they got to score a lot of points.
Yeah.
Now they were dinged up at wide receiver. They didn't have their number one, George Pickens, and I think that definitely changes the tone. The Steelers are a tough physical team, but again, I think the Ravens minimize the stupid plays, which they seem to get in their own way against the Steelers more than they do against any other team. Also, the biggest thing I noticed yesterday, Ravens had 2 penalties for 10 yards. The Ravens are the most penalized team in the NFL and played with some discipline.
I mean, here's the thing. Like my sports schedule goes as such. Saturdays for college.
Yeah, I agree.
NFL is on Sundays, Mondays, like Thursdays.
Why was the NFL playing on the day when they had these college games?
Listen, I don't know, but those games snuck by me because I'm like, today is Saturday.
Yeah.
Today I'm watching bowl games. We are very sports oriented in this house, as you know.
Understandable.
But
we're very sports oriented in this podcast, as you know, as our listeners know.
As our listeners know. But I run a tight ship on watching games because I need to be abreast of what's going on.
Need content.
Make sure I'm not speaking out of turn. But I felt like, wait a minute. You pull the wool over my eyes and you snuck these 2 games in. And the reason being is because Christmas falls on a Wednesday. You and I talked about this. Normally, if Christmas falls on a Thursday, a Sunday,
you would have
a Monday,
you would have NFL games.
You would have an NFL game because why? Because that is the day that you go to work. And sometimes you pull the short straw and you got to play. Okay, great. Now the NFL's saying, oh, wait. We have an opportunity to make money here. So we're going to put it on Netflix, which if anybody watched the Tyson fight was a little sketchy, was a little buffery. We're going to put our two games. We're going to do a Christmas thing. We're going to have Beyonce do a mini halftime thing, which like, who cares?
Right.
My thing is like, so you say, oh, we'll push a game to Saturday. It'll be like a Thursday game.
Right.
But here's the thing. They're not canceling the Thursday game. They're still playing on Thursday.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you just shift this to Thursday?
And then you have the Ravens, the Steelers, the Chiefs, and the Texans playing 3 games in 11 days.
Yes, that's too
much. For a league that's so
season.
concerned about players. Like, listen, Just
they don't
stop
care.
peeing on my leg and telling me it's raining.
Exactly.
Look, if you want to say you're in it for the Bucks and we don't care what we do to these guys, they're modern day gladiators, let them beat their brains in, fine. At least you're honest with them.
Yeah.
Because they all know it's BS, okay? These guys know this is a total sham.
It's a total money grab. And my other thing is like, so you give exactly the same people who just played are playing again.
Yeah, and that's why they had those teams all playing.
It's so stupid.
Yeah,
it's like, well, then just then move the game. Here's my thing. Then move the Saturday game to the Wednesday game.
Right.
Just shift it.
Give them an extra
Give
couple
them
days.
an extra couple of days. It doesn't make a difference one way or the other. And here's the other thing. People are not expecting to watch a football game on Christmas Day. It's probably not a part of their day.
I generally think on Christmas Day is NBA.
Same.
It's kind of like when the NBA season kicks
That's
off. It's
it.
not when it starts, but that's like
No,
kind of when
that's when
the
people
NBA
start paying attention.
features. It's right. They'll have marquee games. You know, you'd see a lot of times like Celtics, Lakers recently.
Yes.
You know, you'll see LeBron or
Yeah.
you know
They're like 76ers.
they do a great job featuring their stars on
They do.
Christmas Day. You know,
And
you
that's
see Steph Curry. And you know, a lot of us here don't get to see Steph Curry because he's out west. You know,
Yeah.
so you'd play him in a day game, so you get to see Steph.
Yeah.
Or whatever, or LeBron now because he's in LA, right? You know, or maybe they would have the Spurs because you'd feature like Victor Wembanyama.
Absolutely.
You know, your new stars. Yeah, I think
I
I mean, that's the sport that I most associate with Christmas.
Yeah. And my thing is, I just don't get, I get it. It's a 1:00 and a 4:30 game. Okay. So now I have to it's not going to affect my day,
Right.
but my thing is like, I think it sucks. I think it sucks for the NFL players. I think it sucks for the NFL that they're like the broadcasting. So we're not going to do a normal game. We're going to go on streaming.
Right.
So for Netflix, I have a hard enough time keeping track of like what game is on what network at what day. You know, I'm like, Amazon is easy this Thursday,
Right.
whatever. But I mean, everybody else, and then there's multiple games on multiple different. My point is, so there's this week, if we're going to start the week on a Saturday, we have a Saturday game, we have Sunday games, we have Monday games, we have Wednesday games, we have Thursday game, and we're back on Sunday.
Right.
So there's that's ridiculous. That's a ridiculous pace at this point in the season for these guys that you're expecting them to recover and then go out and perform. Right. It's like,
no, I agree. And look, they're athletes and they're entertainers. They get that. But, you know, these guys also got kids, families. Like, right. Yeah. So the Ravens are going to be leaving on Tuesday.
Yeah.
They're not going to be there with their kids on Christmas morning. Even the guys at Houston are going to be leaving the house early, right? They got to get up and go.
It's a game day, so they're not even.
And again, as you said, hey, sometimes you draw the short straw. If it's a Sunday, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But like, this isn't a work day for these guys
No.
in the classic sense of what is a work day for these guys.
And I think if the NFL expects them to do that because they've given them an extra game or whatever, then they need to get a special dispensation for that. I've heard football players talk about it. It's like being in a car accident once a week.
Yeah.
And when you have a 2-game week, it's awful.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. Like
now we're getting like 2. And here's the other thing: the Chiefs are a banged up team anyway.
And you have the Ravens and the Steelers, who it's always going to be a very physical game.
Exactly.
So so they have Sunday, Monday, on a plane on Tuesday, which those guys do not like, because it messes with your like swelling and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
So so they're going to have 2 days, got to get on an airplane.
Yeah.
Those guys don't love this.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, my thing is like, you know, it's just, it's terrible. I wish they hadn't done it. I think that if you're listening, Goodell, I think that you should maybe not do this next year because it's not worth it. And I hope that they have great games, but I hope that Netflix gets their stuff together because if there's any buffering at any point in time, people are turning that game off and they're going to complain.
And think about it. So it is the holidays, so people are going to be off. So a lot of people are going to want to tune in.
Yeah.
You also have the Chiefs, which
and
have a very big fan base. Okay. You have the Steelers, which have a very big fan base. And not just because I'm a Ravens fan, because the Ravens have Lamar Jackson, there's a lot of interest in watching the Ravens play, and Houston's the 4th largest city in America. So these teams all have big fan bases that are going to be tuning in.
They have massive fan bases, and then you have the added non-fan base.
But it's Christmas because it's all like, let's put it on, right?
Let's put it on, and then also you have people that have no interest in football, love Beyonce, and they're going to tune into the 4:30 game because it's a Texas Ravens game. So you're going to have Baltimore, you're going to have Texan-based people, then you're going to have music-based people, and I hope to God that Netflix knows what they're doing, but after that Tyson fight, I'm going to say probably not.
Well, they're going to get put to the test. So, but it's no, No, we'll see, but it is interesting. The Ravens Steelers both tied.
Mm-hmm.
If they both win out, though, the Steelers, I think, will win the division by like the 5th tiebreaker, because it would be head to head would be the same. The same in their own division would be the same, but it goes down. It would be like their wins against the conference. I think the Steelers would have an advantage. So but it's but the Ravens theoretically have an easier road.
Yeah.
The Ravens have the Texans, who are good, but they're beat up at wide receiver. They lost another wide receiver, Tank Dell, bad injury last night. So Tank Dell, so they're sort of banged up at receiver. So the Ravens have them, and then they have the Browns, who the Ravens amazingly lost to. But they do play the Browns, who are 3-11, something like that. The Steelers have the defending 2-time Super Bowl champions, banged up or not, still the Chiefs, and the Chiefs still got to win this game because they're looking for home field throughout, so they have everything to play for.
Yeah.
And then they have the Bengals, who, again, 6-8, not great, but, man, the Bengals can score some frickin' points.
They can.
So I think if I was a betting person, which I'm not, I give the Ravens a slight betting on, and I think actually Vegas had it like 53-47.
Really?
It's 53% chance that the Ravens will win the division.
Wow.
But what you might very well see is the Ravens being the 4 seed and the Steelers being the 5, which means they're going to play each other. Again. But it's a question of where they're going to play. And I can tell you both of those teams would like to play each other at home.
Absolutely.
They'd rather be at home. Yep.
Well, today we got the Eagles and the Red Commie Bastards.
Yeah,
at 1 o'clock.
and the the Eagles playing for home field throughout. The Lions are tied. I think both
they're tied
2 losses,
11-1
or 12-2, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But they're both 2-loss teams. So it's an important game for them. Important game for the Commanders. Looking for playoff seeding, trying to make sure they get in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Which would be quite an accomplishment for the Commanders.
It would be, especially the first year with a new owner and everything else. So I think the Commanders had a better year than I expected.
And by the way, they had a really good night on Friday night. With the Congress, the Senate voted that will give the District of Columbia control over the 170-acre RFK site.
Yeah.
Which might very well lead to the Commanders going home.
That would be great.
So they could be back
in DC.
In DC.
That would be wonderful.
So,
speaking of DC, Kennedy Center. We love the Kennedy Center.
Absolutely.
Kennedy Center honors, which I think is really great. One of the things I really liked about the art, what we do as a nation is we honor arts and entertainment and people that bring a lot to the table. And
it's one of the highest honors that the artists can receive is the Kennedy Center.
Right. So the Grateful Dead has received the Kennedy Center honor, along with Bonnie Raitt and Francis Ford Coppola and the Apollo Theater.
Yeah, I mean some hard-hitting stuff.
Hard-hitting stuff. And I think that we're like, you and I were talking about it. You're like, we got to talk about the Grateful Dead getting the Kennedy Center honor. They air tonight on CBS, so if you want to watch it, that's great. Queen Latifah did a version of Shakedown Street, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So I love it. I love the fact that they got it. There are only 3 surviving members, with Phil knowing that he received it.
Yeah.
And
remember, for those of you who aren't Grateful Dead fans, right, the legendary Grateful Dead bassist Phil Lesh passed away about a month ago. Actually, I know it was the end of October because I was in court and I was like, "Why are you people texting me this? I'm fragile."
Yes.
So it was the end of October, so about 2 months ago.
2 months ago, and I think he knew about it, so that's good that he knew that he received the honor. The Grateful Dead received the honor. I believe Jerry's daughter was there on behalf of him. I just think that it's a cool honor to see. And like you said, counterculture has become culture.
Yeah. I mean, think about everybody knows the Grateful Dead, whether you like them, hate them, however you feel about them. Right. And very few people hate the Grateful Dead. They might be, it's not my thing, but cool.
Right. They might roll their eyes.
But when they say that they don't like the Grateful Dead, you start playing songs. They're like, "Oh man, I really like that song." I'm like, yeah, that's the Dead.
That's the Dead. Yeah.
Okay. By the way, you hear the Dead constantly on the ins and outs in the NFL and in Major League Baseball. Yeah. That's you'll hear
Dead and Fish, which is pretty popular.
You hear Shakedown Street a lot. You'll hear that riff coming out.
I will tell you, it's really fun to watch the intros and outros to commercial breaks because your ears will just, I don't know, they'll perk up. I mean, I grew up with the Grateful Dead. My dad had a West Virginia license plate that said Deadhead. He followed them around. He saw them all over the place. Steeped in that.
Well, but what we said before is the Grateful Dead never changed.
No.
Okay, like they were the the epicenter of the counterculture. Okay, I mean they were the house band for Timothy Leary. Okay,
Yes,
yes,
exactly.
The electric Kool-Aid acid test kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right, they were house band with Ken Keasley, right? And the Merry Pranksters. These are their friends. Okay,
Yeah.
the epicenter of the West Coast counterculture.
Yep, San Francisco.
And they never changed, right? Based out of the hate, right? Okay, and so they never really changed who they were. They just kind of always did what they did.
Yep.
Did it the way they did it. Maybe it got bigger or smaller, whatever, but they just kept doing it how they did it. And they never said, oh, we're going to bring this out so we can have a mainstream hit or we can be a mainstream album. They just made the music the way they made music. But again, cultures come to them, right? They're now in the epicenter. And, I just thought about, like, if you ever watched interviews, they'll ask, like, Jerry a question, like, in the 80s, and he just sort of, like, smiles. He's like, man, I don't understand it either.
Yeah, he's like, we just keep playing.
Yeah, we just keep
showing up.
Yeah. And he would be like, I think there's somewhere that Jerry is probably having a pretty good chuckle.
Yeah.
Probably with Phil. I hope somewhere in the cosmos that he and Phil are sitting there hanging out with Pigpen and Brett and Keith Gottschall and sitting there, man, saying, man, can you believe this? And you know what? One of them would look at him and I'd hope say, man, what a long strange trip it's been. Yeah. Because, man, it's the definition of a long strange trip. I'm an unapologetic Deadhead, as are you, and as are a lot of our friends, and a lot of people are. But then I would sit there and say, right, I've gone mainstream, right? It used to be like the Deadheads of what people would think like a Deadhead would be or do for a living, right?
Well, that's the thing.
But we talked about it. It's changed, right? Jerome Powell, the man who sets monetary policy for the country, thus is one of the most influential financial people in the world. Deadhead. He was at the same show I was at.
Well, so I mean, here's the thing. I think you grow up. Everybody grows up, right? And I think, and I will say this about Fish, because that was my ilk of jam band situation. I truly believe, because Fish broke up when I think my senior year of high school.
Because I saw Fish in '95 when they were still playing. I saw them. Thought I bought the ticket for the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. Realized I bought it for the day before Thanksgiving. Nice. So I got home on Thanksgiving morning, not exactly sure how I made it home, but I had to drive from the Cap Center to Cumberland. The dorms were closed, so we had to get back. Also a long, strange trip.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. So I was like, okay, well, I swear that the majority of my friends went and finished college because Fish broke up.
Yeah.
And I think they did a good service. But here's the thing, we're all like older now.
Right.
They went back out on tour and we're all like, oh my God, we were like super, super excited. But I think the Dead has always been there, and there's always been like, okay, so I never got to see Jerry because he died when I was
I didn't see Jerry live because I had tickets to see Jerry, and Jerry died when I was supposed to see him. Also the same year, so I did see Fish.
But so that's the thing. So I was like, okay, well, I didn't get to see that, but I saw Phil Lesh and Friends. I saw Rat Dog, which is the Bobbie Weir's band.
I've seen both of those bands.
And so it's sort of like, I had iterations. I got to see the Dead, right? And then Dead, they did the big anniversary shows in Chicago, and that was like kind of reignited their whole like, okay, we should do this whole thing. And then Dead and Company came around. So I think, I was excited to see, and Dark Star. Yeah. Can't forget Dark Star, which is a really great Grateful Dead cover band.
Yes. That plays does an entire cover of a set.
Of a whole set.
And people try to figure out like when they're playing what the set is. It's part of the game.
I took my parents and our really good friends, Bill and John. We went to Rams Head Live in Baltimore. Dark Star was playing, and Donna opened for Dark Star, which I thought was hysterical. She sounds much better now than she did in the records in the 70s. She sounds like a cat in heat.
Yeah, so, she a lot of people, Donna rubbed a lot of people the wrong way.
She's not my favorite.
No, I get it.
But what I will say,
but she's uniquely part of the Grateful Dead. It's just part of that thing.
She is. She's a part of that whole thing, the history. But we went, and my dad was like, "This is really awesome," because he and I couldn't have had that experience together. And so I was like, "Hey, let's do the next best thing," which was really great. But what I'm saying is the Grateful Dead has been in the ether, and you can see it live. You can see versions of it live for a long time. And then they did Dead and Company, which was really lovely.
And listen, and it's right. I passed it down to my daughter. Like, I've told that story on here before. She's a very little kid. We climb in the car. I'm driving her and like two other little girls. They're getting buckled in the back seat. One of the little girls cheerily chirps in, hey, in my mom's car, we listen to Disney radio, and my daughter cheerily chirps back. In my dad's car, we listen to the Grateful Dead.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
And it's like, right, and we listen to the Grateful Dead, you know, and so.
And I think that for as much as it was a counterculture thing for such a long time, if you just look at it, like even like Jerry Garcia band and stuff after or during, right. I think that there's, lots of throwbacks to bluegrass and Americana music, which makes it so undeniably
American, the fabric.
Exactly,
I mean, no, there's ragtime. Okay, they like to play ragtime. Yeah. Remember they did the whole Western thing for a while.
Oh my God,
they're singing Mexicali blues and they're covering El Paso.
Let me tell you, when we were in far West Texas a couple years ago, that was the album we played because we were just like, this is.
You know what Bobbie's talking about? Out in the West Coast, because it's down. He's covering Marty Robbins. If you don't know, I mean, you would know that, but there are a lot of people. Yeah, he's covered.
We landed in El Paso.
And
got in the car,
and what else?
And we're putting that on, and it's sort of like, okay, so they're able to kind of weave this beautiful American fabric of music for you.
Well, but you were even talking like, listen to Shakedown, right? You can feel the disco vibes on some of those, boom, boom,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, even listening to the sound, it's not like they're not trying to be a disco band, okay? But it's an homage to the music. They're making their music the way they do. But they're recognizing that other music's out there, right?
Well,
that's what they did. They were able to borrow. They're the Grateful Dead are the quintessential American band.
Yeah,
they just are.
Well, and also I love that there's an interview with Bill Kretzmann and Bobbie, and they're like, okay, so and Mickey Hart, and they said, listen. Your fans expect you to change. How did you create a fan base that expected you to change? Right. And they're like, that's a really good observation. We haven't really thought about it because, we're just doing what we want to do.
Right.
We're writing songs that we want to write. We're playing it in the way that we want to play. Yeah, we're influenced by other bands, but like it's distinctly us. But yeah, you're right. Our fan base has only grown, and they don't want you to stay the same. Like some fan bases, they're like, no, play the same stuff the same way. And the dad is like, no, we're the ability to play the same song 5 or 6 different ways, and just creating space and like all these things. And Phil was a really big proponent of
and
that.
we also, a classically trained musician.
Yes.
Phil Lesh is a classically trained. But as you said, the ability for the Grateful Dead to be playing one song, go into another song, and then come back in where they left the first song and string that back together. It's just what they put it together, and it always sounds different. Like the way they play a song live is going to sound different. And their ability to take songs that they heard and cover them, you know, I mean.
Well, also I will say, I love this. I love these trivia things that they'll play with Deadheads in parking lots. Where they'll say like, okay, what year was this?
Right.
We're going to play you a live show. You tell me what year it was. And I love to play along, and I'm like, oh, that's 73. And I might be like a year off, but I'm definitely in it. And I think that it's because different eras of Dead, because your ear is just attuned to that. And I think a lot of it was because my dad had a lot of bootleg tapes and stuff like that, which is part of the story of the Dead too.
And one of the ways that we would know is okay, Pigpen, it was sort of that other huge voice. Okay. Yeah. So if you don't hear, if he ain't balling that jack from dusk till dawn, you don't hear that voice or you'll hear that it's much more blues heavy when Pigpen's playing. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. You'll feel the blues of it versus, as you said, you'll hear Donna screeching.
Yeah.
And then, but so many Deadheads, we know their voices. Like we can hear Brett singing with Jerry and Bob, versus.
And also if it sounds awful.
Yeah.
They
were, there were times, and like they will admit that, like they were either struggling or things just weren't. They're like, man, we just didn't sound very good then. Like they knew,
or you just knew like the height of when Jerry was like having issues.
Yeah,
and then you're like, oh, this is probably like 85.
Right, and it's like because Jerry's been dealing with health issues. Okay, and like his skill level would suffer because of his whatever he was going through. Right. Or though sometimes like when Jerry had gotten sick and then he'd gotten better, man, he's really good because Jerry's really switched on, okay, in a very good way. No, it's all part of the mesh that's the Grateful Dead. And there's so many of their songs, which also blows people's mind, that were never released on a studio album.
No.
Like so much of their catalog is just live.
Yeah, and they only had one Billboard charting song, which was "Touch of Grey."
Right.
You know, whatever.
It's one of those songs. It's not like most Grateful Dead people. You don't identify like if you start asking me listening like top 10 songs.
It'd be
it's
like,
not.
hey man, what's your favorite Grateful Dead song? And if you say "Touch of Grey,"
Right.
we're done.
Right. Like I'm never gonna say Touch of Grey. I'm never gonna say Uncle John's Band. Okay, which I like Uncle John's Band,
good band. It's a good song.
but it's like every Tom, Dick, or Harry knows
it's
that.
an intro song.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna probably almost always tell you, and it is really hard for me. I love Althea. I love different versions of Althea. And I've always loved, because of my relationship with my uncle, and I've always related to me and my uncle, that Western era.
Yeah.
Okay. And I like that song
Sure.
when they do it, when they're hightailing it to Mexico, right?
Yeah,
I
right.
mean, it's just like, it is so, so there's certain songs that just appeal to me.
Sure.
But on any given day, I'd say those two songs. But you could ask me tomorrow, I might tell you two different ones.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Estimated Prophet, and my daughter loves Estimated Prophet, right? Just standing in a shaft of light, and it's just, I mean, I love the story of trucking, right? I mean, they're telling you. And then, I mean, God, it's so sentimental when they start playing like Ripple, right? I mean, everybody knows Ripple, but it's just what it means to you, or, I just think that there's,
I mean, Eyes of the World is a really good one.
Yeah.
And I always love Scarlet Begonia.
Yeah, I mean, right.
Yeah.
She had rings on her fingers and bells on her shoes.
Yeah, and it's just like such a good beat, like such a good riff. And I just really, it's very nostalgic. Grateful Dead is always going to be nostalgic for me, and it's always going to be a part of, like me going through the bookcase in my parents' house and like looking at a book, and then a 2 Grateful Dead ticket stubs pop out, and you're just like, whoa, all right, cool.
But it's so cool, like, and again, when you're having a really good day, you can put the Grateful Dead on. When you're having a really tough day, you put the Grateful Dead on. When somebody's died, you put the Grateful Dead on. When somebody's getting married, you can put the Grateful Dead on.
Yeah.
And again, we could do we could make this podcast like many other people and nothing but the Grateful Dead.
Yeah,
we could play albums and talk about what we liked or didn't like about it. I could just go on about this forever, because again, it's not. The Grateful Dead doesn't define who I am, but it is an integral part of my life. It's the soundtrack of my life and millions of other people.
Yeah.
You associate events and you're like, oh, I listened to that song.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, or people, like spending time with people. For sure. And it's really nice to have something that's such an integral part of your life, and is basically the soundtrack of your life in some regards, be recognized on a national level for its merit. And I think that that's really kind of cool, because you're like, yeah, man, I had it right all along, and now you guys are just catching up, which I think
right. I mean, cool. I mean, think about it. Like in a very retrospective song, I was just thinking of it, and I was just blanking. I want to make sure I had it right. Addicts of My Life. You know what I mean? Like, just
or Broke Down Palace.
I think Broke Down Palace. I think about like my parents passing away.
Yeah.
I think about like those are what I play when my dogs have died. I play Broke Down Palace. And it's they're just such emotional songs.
Yeah. I think especially, I will say this, especially for dudes that have a hard time tapping into their emotions and expressing their emotions. Right. Music is a really powerful way to do that, and allowing you to kind of like get it out and be productive, and productive in a meaning of like just dealing with it and sitting in it for a minute. And songs and music really has that effect on people. So again, if you're feeling kind of bad, it's there. If you need to feel like empowered, or you think you're making bad decisions, just remember you can always hightail it to Mexico.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, and
or you just got to get trucking.
You just have to get trucking. So, also at the holiday season, we talked about it earlier, and we talk about this during Thanksgiving too. But like, if you feel like you're all alone and you're, a little out of it, you're not, and you reach out, and if you yourself are feeling pretty good, but maybe notice that somebody is really struggling, it's time to reach out. And
maybe you talk to them and call them, maybe one of your friends who does like the Dead, and you just want to start a discussion. Be like, man, I was just listening.
Send him a song.
I was listening from the Dead from, like 76, wherever you're talking from, man. I just listened to this set. Like my friends and I will someone will send to YouTube like, man, I just listened to this.
And I think that just that little
it's a burner. They'll be like, man, Jerry's just tearing it up, and like you listen to it or you've heard it before, but you're like, oh man, I forgot how good they were.
Exactly. And I think that even sharing music is really powerful too. And I think that, going into the next, and a lot of people have anxiety over the next 4 years. And I think that upcoming 4 years. And I think that being really supportive and sending bits of joy to people is going to be really helpful.
Yeah.
And I think that,
but I think what you said, like, again, I think that just the Grateful Dead, I think it really is a good way for, and again, maybe for all of us, but maybe men that certainly do have trouble sometimes expressing their emotions. I mean, I do say it all the time, but there are times I just sit back and like marvel at where my life is and where I find myself at 47 and think, man, what a long, strange trip this life is.
Yeah.
What life is for all. And by the way, if your life hasn't been a long, strange trip,
that's
man,
cool.
Well, I don't know. I think if your life hasn't been a long, strange trip, man, you're probably not doing it right. It's supposed to be strange. It's supposed to be
messy. It's supposed to be awkward. It's supposed to be a huge learning thing. Right. I think if you're sitting back and thinking about it and you're going, oh man, I haven't had these experiences yet.
Right.
So go and make those things happen. So for man, yourself.
I've had people challenge me in the last couple of weeks about making a bucket list.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, I try to do it when I think about it. Yeah. Right. I'm like, traveling's not really my thing, but I'll sit there and like, man, if I want to do something or see something or hear something or watch something, man, I just kind of try to do it as I go. Like, so, I'm not sitting there saving up to when I'm old, like I don't want.
Let's have those experiences now
or older, I should say. Yeah. I'm old. I guess I'm old already.
No, you're not old. But I feel like so. Like Tim and I were having this discussion last night. We were watching this show on Apple TV called Bad Sisters. It takes place in Ireland, and I looked over at him and I'm like, man, Ireland is beautiful. Will you take me to Ireland? And he's like, yeah, let's go. Right. And it's sort of like, okay, well, that's a thing, right? So like, instead of it being like, oh, one day, let's go. It's like, all right, let's try to plan this out and like make it happen.
Right. And again, I have done that. And and I lived in Ireland and I went there and you want
to go to Ireland? You want to go back?
I might. I've been to, I spent a week in Amsterdam, man. And so it's like I got like now that I'm good. I checked that box.
Did you go to the museums or did you just?
No, I did. Like I've seen the Night Watch. I've been in Anne Frank House. I've been to the Heineken Brewery Elite tour back in the day.
No Guinness though.
No Guinness.
There is a worldwide shortage of Guinness. Did you know this?
That's a tragedy.
It is a tragedy.
You know why?
Why?
It's just the world trying to keep the Irish down.
Well, I think it's the world now acknowledging that the Irish make really good beer.
Well, I said it's but it's just kind of screwing over every good Irishman out there. But I was like, what is it? God created alcohol so the Irish wouldn't rule the world.
Yeah, that's probably true. That's probably true.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm just saying, like, you're right. Bucket lists are for people that are thinking about their future, thinking about all the things they want to do instead of actively making them happen.
Yeah, I'm saying, like, just do it. And like the Grateful Dead personified, just do it,
just
man.
Go out there and get it done. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just do whatever, and it'll be what it'll be, and it'll have curves and bends. And
I just think that these guys went out. They're like, we want to play music. We want to play music together. We're going to figure it out. And we
don't want to have a real job. Like for them, like
exactly.
they would say, like, man, we did not want to have nine.
No.
They didn't know if this was going to work or not, but they knew, like, we're going to try to do this because we don't want to be like 9-to-5ers. And there's nothing wrong with being a 9-to-5er. But like they knew that's not what they wanted to do with their life.
Yeah, and I think good for them. And they got to see the world, and now the world is seeing them.
Yeah. So, but we could do it forever. But hey, it's season 4, 5.
Season 5, episode 8.
God, I mean, I see again, just losing the seasons, man. But no, it's
officially winter.
It is. But the days are started to get longer.
Yes.
We've hit nadir again, as I said earlier. We hit nadir. We're on the way back up.
Love it.
But yeah, it's so if you've just tuned in, to hear our homage to, amongst other things, the Grateful Dead.
And Rickey Henderson.
I mean, and by the way, both shout out to the Bay Area.
Seriously,
man, right? This is Bay Area centric, man.
This is the eighth season.
This is your moment, Bay Area.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're here.
We see you.
We see you. We hear you. Yeah.
And we love you.
Yeah. But so it's obviously, Lydia, it kind of points out that there's been 4 previous seasons. There's been 7 previous episodes this season. So for those of you who stumble upon us, where can they find those previous seasons, those previous episodes?
Let me pull the list out here. It's iTunes, Stitcher, Amazon, Google Play, Spotify, Audible. iHeartRadio, Deezer, Player FM, and YouTube.
Yep.
We're not physically on YouTube.
You can find us on Facebook.
Yeah,
right?
we're at You Don't Know Jack podcast.
Are we on Insta too?
Yeah, we're at Jack YDK Pod on Instagram.
And you can find us on Twitter at at Jack YDK.
Yep.
You can give a shout out to Lydia on Twitter
At RTL Pod.
and you can find me at JMGGMPG. So Lydia, I'll just say, happy whatever to whatever for people are.
Happy winter.
Yeah, happy winter. Happy, Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Happy Kwanzaa. Happy spending time with your family. Again, Lydia sort of touched on it. We got through the election season, and I've talked about this before. You know what? Don't give in and let any political person from any side divide you from your family. The things that unite us as family, the things that unite us as friends, the things that unite us as Americans are so much stronger than what divides us. Don't let this divide you. Like, don't sit there and say, oh, I don't want to sit there. I don't want to go to dinner at my uncle's house or with my brother or my cousin or my buddy that you've met up with for 20 years over political nonsense. And just don't give in to that. Don't concede. And look, I'm all for people maintaining their emotional health and psychological well-being, but I'm saying, man, they're your friends, they're your neighbors, they're your family, they're your
don't
whatever. Limit
yourself.
Yeah, just don't. I don't know.
I heard this really good thing from my favorite person, RuPaul, who one of my favorite people said, "You can look at the darkness, but don't stare."
Yeah.
So you can know it's there,
right?
But don't stare at it because it'll consume you otherwise.
Right.
And look for joy.
Yeah.
And create joy for yourself and others. And if you live by that for the next 4 years, fantastic. And longer, even better. But look for things that bring you joy. And if somebody is really making you upset because of who they decided to align themselves politically, then think about something that brought you joy with that person. Focus on that. And only talk about that. Yeah,
and I will say, right before I came over, I was watching Meet the Press, and I saw James Langford from Oklahoma, and Raphael Warnock from Georgia on together. They are both ordained Baptist ministers, and they were even talking about you don't have to concede your values, but man, we got to find stuff to work together. We're better than that. Don't let in. And they were talking about there's so much more that unite us as Americans. And they were talking about, again, doesn't mean that you're not going to have disagreements, but you can do it without being disagreeable. And it really did make me feel better. Two guys that couldn't be more different, but also couldn't be more the same.
Exactly. And it's one reason I really like this podcast is if things get hairy politically, somebody brings up in conversation, I switch it to sports so fast. Yeah. And here's the thing. Everybody likes sports. Everybody has an opinion about sports. Nobody really knows. We're not athletes, but my God, we can have an opinion about it.
Right.
But I think that
or switch it to music.
Or switch it to music or sports. And if you have any questions about if you need help with that, then you need to listen to this podcast every week. We'll give you some pretty cool talking points.
Yeah, or switch to if you're up here in Mountain Maryland, how cool it looks downtown, man.
Yes.
How
cool it looks downtown. All the local businesses seem to be doing pretty good.
Yeah.
Hey, go out and support, blah, blah, blah. But honestly, the biggest thing, I got into a weird kind of loop with somebody said something and somebody else kind of picked up on it. And I was like, man, Juan Soto, would you ever pay? And that was it. And that got me out of a really awkward, what could have been potentially weird.
Yeah.
For them, not me.
Right.
But, it would have just been like, okay, hey, we're going to talk about Juan Soto.
Right.
Yeah,
man.
And so I feel like, sports definitely are a good uniter for people.
Always something to change the topic.
Absolutely.
Never the Grateful Dead.
Never the Grateful Dead. Awesome.
All right. Hey, happy holidays.
Yeah, same to you.
See you soon.
See you Friday.
Yep.